Hello and welcome to the Blue Shifting. If you haven't guessed quite yet, hello, by the way, yes, hello. But if you haven't guessed quite yet, we're going to be doing a Draw My Life. Now I know this is like an old meme and it's like long dead, but just bear with me here because I really liked it when my favorite YouTubers were doing these a couple years ago. I think they were all the rage in like 2012. I'm not entirely sure if I remember. And I honestly feel like I've got an interesting enough background that I really want to share it with you guys. And so if you stick around, I think you'll learn a little bit about me and hopefully you'll understand kind of what led me here to become a YouTuber and where how my family and I found each other. So I was born, as most people are. I was born in a happy home, I suppose, with my mother and father. I was born in a hospital in a city in Wyoming that I've never ever visited really since then. I think I drove through it once. But the town really wasn't that important. The fact was that it was a family thing and we were together. It was a trying time for my parents, both of which were students at the time, though my mom decided to put her studies aside to take care of me, as I was growing up. And my dad continued his work as a mechanical engineer, and he loved that stuff. And I don't know, like, life was pretty dull. I grew up pretty standardly. I didn't really have anything too exciting happen when I was a little kid, but I know that my parents loved me and they still love me, and I care a lot about them. And so like I wanted to let you know that because they became very important in my life. They helped me become who I am and become a good listener in particular. They really taught me about the importance of, paying attention to what others are saying and feeling and not always putting yourself before everything else. So when I was really, really young, we moved around a lot. Like, I don't remember any of this except for one final move where we moved to the glorious potato state of Idaho. Yeah, I know. It's pretty much the middle of nowhere, and you'd be right to think so. I also can't draw it at all, but it looks something like this. Anyway, we moved there into a southern part. Over here is where over on the left side is where the capital was. We were on the opposite side of the state, and it's such a big drive between the 2 points that I never really got to see the capital until I was a lot older. But we moved there for work, and that's really where my life kind of began, because that's where I started remembering things and becoming older. Yeah, there's it's like I said, it's the potato state. There's really not a whole lot that's exciting there. There's lots of farms, but there's a decent amount of people, and I don't know. It was just where I grew up. So, like everyone else, I went to school. We moved there in time for me to go to kindergarten. So, I was all excited and woohoo, going to school. And, as time went on, things happened. And I noticed that I started to change a little bit, different to the other students. There were a few like me, but it's not very often that you have a kind of an obese child. And that's really what happened to me. I slowly started to gain weight. And it's funny because you could just say my parents were not controlling my diet or whatever, but no, my mom was a health nut. To this day, she hardly eats a thing. And she was really concerned with my size. And as I got older and older, I got larger and larger until I got to high school. And when I got to high school, it kind of became a bit more of an issue. I started having self-esteem issues. And I think that's common for a lot of kids who are overweight. You're different, and physically it makes it difficult for you to do things. Now, I had a good excuse for it because I didn't overeat, I didn't have truly an unhealthy lifestyle. I was actually pretty active. My issue was that I had asthma. And when you have asthma that isn't diagnosed, it can be a bit challenging because it's not diagnosed. And I never knew that I wasn't supposed to be able to. I never knew that I wasn't breathing properly. I never noticed that I wasn't actually getting tired when I started running. It was that I couldn't get enough oxygen. But it was in high school that I met another friend of mine. Now, he was kind of different from me. He was much more the burlier kind of guy. He was tough and taekwondo, and he became my best friend. And he really kind of helped me figure out who I was, namely a geek. We would do all kinds of stuff together, playing video games, watching Red vs. Blue, and just kind of going through high school, and I was happy. I was happy to finally make a friend and to feel like I belonged somewhere. Now, no high school story is complete without the high school love interest. It sounds super cliche, but I think we all have at least that one crush, that one person that you kind of just fall for and you're head over heels and can't do anything about. We're gonna call her Amy, just to protect her namesake. But Amy was a writer on the school newspaper, and that was where we first met. And that was one of the things that we kind of bonded over, was the fact that we both loved to write. I was a passionate writer myself, and kind of at that time wanted to go into the journalistic lifestyle. Funnily enough, that class convinced me I did not want to be a journalist, but it introduced me to someone who become my female best friend. And we did everything together. It was ridiculous. We actually wrote a story together. That was something that kind of held us together as friends over the course of the summer seasons. And we continued to work on that story until, we parted ways later on. We would talk all the time. She would ask me questions about boys and get advice from me, which is, always heartbreaking as being like the guy who was infatuated. But I always helped her out because, we were close. We were good friends, and I wanted the best for her. We would talk on the phones all the time. It even got to the point where we used to call each other pretty much every day, and we would talk for hours and hours of just random stuff. And I was invited to some of her birthday parties as a guest. Her friends recognized that we were close, even though they weren't really fond of me personally. But we got along well enough, and life was getting pretty good. But for years, I held on to this crush, and nothing really came of it. But I never relented, and eventually, things started to happen. Eventually we kind of found out that we're best friends, and she started to, I don't know really what changed, but she suddenly recognized that I was important to her. And despite, how I looked, we ended up kind of starting to spend even more time together, and eventually started to date a little bit. And I was about as shocked as anybody, because she was gorgeous and I was not. But you can't really force these things. They kind of just happen, and I was really, really happy. It was like being able to date my best friend, and which she was one of my closest friends, and I will cherish that friendship for the rest of my life. But things were about to take a dramatic turn that kind of would lead me down probably one of the darkest time of my life. You see, at the end of my senior year, I was getting ready to take a trip to go and do some work in another state. She also was preparing for a trip because she was going to take a internship in Germany, and we were going to be separated for 2 years. That's a long time, especially for people who are just starting to date. One thing we decided to do as writers, we thought it would be really fun to take the opportunity to write to each other by pen. And we would do this all the time. But I wasn't truly that happy where I was. You see, I was doing some fun stuff, but I was surrounded by a bunch of other guys that were, very physically active and charismatic, and pretty much all the things I always wanted to be, but I wasn't. And it really made me self-conscious, especially about my body. And it was really an emotional time, and I was under a lot of stress. Being away from my family for the first time, and being, kind of out on my own with this kind of environment, it fostered some kind of bad habits. Now, miraculously, I worked really hard, and I actually lost 150 pounds, actually a little bit more, and I was in the best shape I'd ever been in. It was, quite frankly, incredible, because, everyone was cheering me on, and I'd never seen anything like that before. I looked like a completely different person. Yeah, but there was a downside. I started getting surrounded by these clouds of thought. I couldn't concentrate on anything. My thoughts would get so fuzzy. Basic math would escape me. And stuff I had been able to do just a few months ago suddenly seemed too difficult to do. And I felt sick. I was definitely unhealthy, and I just kept losing weight more and more, well past the point where I should have stopped. And that's when it happened. That's when the doctor called me and told me that he believed that I was having anorexic tendencies. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever encountered an eating disorder or know someone who has. And it might sound weird for a fat person to say he had an eating disorder, but it was true. I would look at food as an enemy. I would force myself to only eat tiny little bits, like a piece of toast in the morning for breakfast with a glass of water, a half-eaten granola bar for lunch, and at the most one single plate of food. And I would force myself to be hungry all the time. and it really made me unhappy. It made me unhealthy. But eventually, I got over it, and when I got home, I found that I was kind of in a better place as far as that goes. Like, I'm one of the lucky ones who was able to get out of the pit of anorexia because I had good support. And I love a food that could overcome my self-loathing that drove my excessive weight loss. And then the day finally came. 2 years passed, and we and my, Amy were going to be back together again. Except that she had moved on and not really told me. She had decided to start dating other people, and shortly after we had an official breakup, when she finally met me again in person, she got married and moved on with life, and I was really sad for a while. I came home and, I was pretty healthy. I was in good shape. However, over time, I started seeing that I was gaining a little bit of weight again. And it wasn't too bad, I was trying to be healthy, and it was under mostly control. But then I got injured. I had a knee surgery, and I wasn't able to be on my feet for very long. And I ballooned right back to where I'd been before. But I was happy. And the weirdest thing about the happiness that came then was finding out and figuring out for the first time in my life that my size didn't have to determine if I was happy. I could be in love with myself and who I was without having to have that perfect body that everyone seemed to clamor about in the magazines in Hollywood. So then, my fat self took myself to school. And at school, I decided to pursue a career in psychology, going into counseling specifically. However, as I learned more and more about the subject, I found out that I wasn't really fond of the idea of having other people's burdens on my back. I'd already shown that I had a life where I could sometimes hardly handle what I had, and so I thought the thought of always listening to other people and always hearing these horrible stories and maybe not even be able to do anything to help them really made me frustrated and depressed. And so I was like, well, obviously that's not right for me. But there was one thing I really liked about psychology, and that was the research. I loved trying to figure out new stuff. And when I started learning into what I wanted to research, I kind of fell back on something I'd loved ever since I was a child. That was space, ultimately physics. And when I finally decided to study physics, I found myself more excited about school than I'd ever been. And I knew that that was the course I wanted to take for the rest of my life. But since when have any plans ever gone according to the plans you come up with? Definitely not for me. Because I ended up meeting a girl, and she was wonderful. And in fact, for some reason, she decided I was pretty wonderful too, and we ended up getting married, and it was awesome. I really found somebody who was my best friend in all terms, somebody who was far better for me than anybody else who I'd been with in my life. And we were really excited when we found out about 6 months after we'd gotten married that she was pregnant. And we were really surprised to find out that she was pregnant with twins. That really shook our world, and I started going crazy because I started realizing, oh my goodness, with babies on the way, and that's 2 of them. I mean, where's the money going to come from? What should I do about school? Should I have to work full time? Because, my wife was, pretty bedridden for a long time, and luckily we'd lived off our savings until the babies finally came. We even though we had no idea how we were going to survive, we were really excited for them to be a part of our lives. And we decided that I was going to become the stay-at-home dad, which is pretty odd, especially for the traditional families. But there's a reason for that. My wife is a very intelligent chemist, and she'd already started her chemistry degree. And that was one of the things that I had found so attractive about her, was that she was smart and she knew how to use her brain. And since I didn't have my degree yet, it made the most sense for her to work and for me to stay at home with the babies. But despite the fact that we would spend our time separated, we were very united, and still are united to this day, where we plan and work things out together. Because we're a team. You can't really do stuff on your own. And we have been very successful in what we do. We decided that the job we had at the time was not good enough, and we needed something more. So we packed up all our things, drove a U-Haul across the country to the state of Wisconsin, where we are now. And while I was in Wisconsin, I decided that I wanted to do something, and that something turned into YouTube. I mean, I was taking care of the family, but I wanted to be making something and pursuing my dreams. And so I started a channel, and I focused the channel on the things that I loved the most, which are anime, books, and video games. And I later changed the video games to be a focus on my favorite genre of video games, which are visual novels. And if you've been watching anything on my channel recently, you know that those are the 3 main things that I talk about on my channel. the YouTubers that helped me decide to take up this hobby, this passion that I never knew I had. I want to give a shout out to them because they're the ones that really set the ground for me. The Anime Man, Lost Paws, Achievement Hunter, and Rooster Teeth. Thank you so much. You have changed my life. I don't know if I'll be able to do it full time like you guys and make money, but that's not the point. The point is that I found something I absolutely love to do. And so here we are, my little family and me, my wife, my beautiful wife and her very, very smart careers, my little boys and their stinky little diapers that I'm changing constantly, and then me, doing my YouTube and finding that part of me that I never knew existed. So you know what? I need to say thank you. And yes, I am saying thank you to you, the one who's watching this video right now, because you're the one who's making this all possible. This is my 100th video, and not only is it my 100th video, but it's also right in the same week that I passed the 100 subscribers mark that people always talk about being the first hump for YouTubers. And you know what? You guys aren't just subscribers to me. I consider you my mates, the people who I sit down with and get to spend some time doing my favorite things. So you know what? I don't know where this road's going to take me, but no matter how many subscribers I get or how fast or slow this channel grows, I just want you to know that I appreciate you. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. Thank you for celebrating this 100 video with my 100 subscribers, and to the future that you and I will share. Thank you. And until you see me in the next video or whatever you happen to watch, I'll see you there.